Welcome to episode 57 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me this week are Jason.
Hello.
Jill.
Hi.
And Andrew.
Hello.
And there were two pretty big pieces of news this week: the release of the latest song from Tiergarten by Kaleidoscope, and the Rolling Stone feature article on Billy Corgan. So let's get started. This one may end up being a slightly longer podcast. Let's start off with the music. Last Tuesday, A Stitch in Time debuted on something called SoundCloud. This was the third free song from Tiergarten to be released, and it was the third song that was previously played at the Spirits in the Sky concerts last August. So what did you guys think of the song, and how do you think it compares to the live version that we heard last August? Jill, why don't you go first?
I actually really like the recording that was released, and I think there's been largely positive commentary on the blog as well. I think the production is simple, it's catchy, it's uplifting and heartfelt, and it's actually, to me, it feels a little bit even more stripped down, even though it's in production value, than it did last on the Spirits in the Sky tour. I don't know. I have positive feelings about it. It's growing on me too.
Yeah, I actually like this version a lot more, I think, than the one played last August. It really, I think the tempo, it really keeps moving along more. I don't know, I wasn't too thrilled about the one they played last August, and I keep waiting for the Annie Dog or the Glass and the Ghost Children of Tiergarten, the song that I just absolutely, can't listen to. But, I mean, this definitely isn't it. This is another really solid song that I really like. I mean, like you said, we've had a lot of real positive comments about this one, and I would definitely agree with them. I actually think of the three songs so far, this one is probably the most classic Pumpkins sound, at least in my mind. I mean, we've talked about the epic qualities of A Song for a Son, but I think this song would fit right in on something like Pisces Iscariot if you just changed the production to match the production of that era, just as far as the song itself goes. In the comments on hipstersunited.com, I said that it reminds me of Siamese Dream, the song. I don't know, I think that's still the best comparison I can make.
Going for the obscure.
I don't even remember Siamese Dream, the song. How is it like Siamese Dream, the song?
I don't know, it has that same kind of jangly guitar sounding, and the oh, there was a lot of that in Siamese Dream, the song, too. What about you, Andrew?
Did everyone like my rendition there? And our closing music this week, Siamese Dream, the song.
I wish. I don't think they ever played that one live.
Just play the studio track.
Wasn't ever officially released, was it? Or was it on a single?
It's like a 7-inch B-side.
Yeah, it's a vinyl B-side.
Yeah. All right.
Another diversion.
Moving back to 2010.
Let's go to SBFC right now. All right. I'm having trouble deciding if this is my most favorite or my second favorite song, and it's between Song for a Son and this one of the three so far. I definitely agree that it sounds like something that very comfortable, what you expect for a poppy Billy Corgan Smashing Pumpkins song to be, and I'm pleased that he's still got these kind of songs in him. Look forward to see what the rest of the album gives us, but it was definitely a nice surprise, and it wasn't too surprising that versus What'll Make My Mind, the comments positive to negative were easily almost all positive, so it was good to get some nice positive feedback going on the project.
What did you think, Jason?
I think really similarly to Andrew in terms of how I would rank the three songs. But it's kind of different. Like, A Song for a Son has actually taken quite a while to grow on me. I mean, in my personal experience. I mean, that's been common to some of the recent Pumpkin songs like Tarantula, right? That one took 15 listens before I had any idea what was going on. And A Song for a Son is obviously a song we know, but a song that they restructured some in the studio, and it's taken me quite a while to kind of embrace the studio version. But, I catch myself doing a little air guitar to the solo now, so, I obviously am brought around to it. But this new one, The Stitch in Time, immediately I liked it. You know, like 10, 30 seconds into it, I was like, this song, I like. And I didn't, I would awake my mind and just kind of, I don't know, it's okay. But I really like the new song.
Yeah, one thing I don't think we really get from, we do these podcasts like a few days or usually 4 or 5 days after the song comes out. So it's still pretty fresh in our minds, and you don't really get a sense of how it lasts. I guess when we start getting later on and the EPs start coming out, we can probably talk about how the songs have grown on us or not grown on us. I think Widow Wake My Mind, I really liked it when it came out, but I don't know if it's really lasted. Whereas, like you said, this song immediately, just from hearing the intro, we played a little bit of the intro for the intro to this podcast. I just loved that immediately. So it'll be interesting to see if that lasts or if it's fleeting.
I think there's an easy simplicity to this song too, that it doesn't try very hard. Just kind of, I don't know, it's comforting in its sort of simplicity, I think.
Yeah, it's comfort. It's like a nice warm casserole your mom used to make, sort of. Comfort music.
Billy is from the Midwest, so.
I compare it to a 7-inch B-side. Andrew compares it to a casserole.
Oh my.
Way to go, Billy. Okay, now for the bad side.
Yeah. It was kind of unfortunate because there was kind of a positive vibe going earlier this week, at least on hipstersunited.com, but the news that dominated the week and kind of overshadowed the song release amongst fans on the blog was a feature article on Billy Corgan that appeared in the latest issue of Rolling Stone magazine. And in the article, which Billy volunteered to be interviewed for, we read about two sides to the Jimmy Chamberlin firing/quitting, depending on who you believe. There was also quite a bit about Billy's non-traditional spiritual beliefs, which we'd heard a little bit about before, his emotional state of mind over the past few years, and some of his recent relationships. So there's a whole lot here to talk about, I think. I guess let's start with Jimmy Chamberlin. Billy made his usual digs at James Iha, but more surprisingly, something that I don't think that fans were expecting until there were some Twitter teases a day or two in advance. But Billy detailed his split with Jimmy Chamberlin last spring, saying that he fired him and that Jimmy is a destructive person. And Jimmy claims half-heartedly, according to the article, that he quit. Jill, you seem pretty upset about Billy's comments on Jimmy in your comment on Hipsters United, but that was before you actually had a chance to read the article. Now that you've read the whole article, what are your thoughts on it? On
specifically the Jimmy Chamberlin part of it?
Yeah.
Just because I think if I start talking generally, I'll rant. I find it upsetting. We have seen on many occasions instances where Billy is kind of burning bridges or at least lighting torches in his media appearances, whether it be targeted at other musicians he perceives as lazy or having betrayed him, or the general sort of the general atmosphere of music criticism right now, or a multitude of different other venues in which he expresses his frustration. We've also seen him lash out at his former bandmates, Darcy and James, and we've seen various dramas unfold in his relationships with, Courtney Love, Tila Tequila, some of these other people that all play some supporting role in the drama that is Billy Corgan. However, to see Corgan come out so dismissively against his former musical soulmate, as far as I knew, and as far as I'd been told by him in live concerts, not individually told, but, he's expressed that idea to the entire crowds at his semi-recent shows. It's really disheartening because I think it actually contrasts with this message of peace, love, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and kind of shows a duality in his attitude. I don't know that you can begrudge Jimmy Chamberlin, at least based on the limited information that we have. I don't know that you can begrudge him of how things turned out, except, say that he's taken the high road so far. I was also impressed with
I'm just kidding. I said that before we even read the article. Remember, Chris? I made that comment on the blog.
Yeah.
People will say Jimmy took the high road.
Yeah.
I'm not denying.
Even James in his comment in the article via email took pretty high road.
I think James takes the highest road.
Yeah.
Personally.
But it is upsetting to me to see this negativity at odds with the more general, positive peace, love, and what are the other aims of everything from here to there? Spiritual integration,
soul, body, mind integration, or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really, truly, and I think we'll probably talk about this at length, so I won't continue ranting, even though I said I wouldn't. I think it belies this sort of. I want to say that it's not very truthful, or it's not very superficial. It seems like Billy has an ulterior motive for doing this, whether it's making it about the story so he sells or gives more free downloads away, or whatnot. I just don't. It doesn't seem very authentic to me, and it seems kind of asshole-ish. So, to say the least.
It's usually so easy to say someone's doing it for the money. He's doing it for the free downloads that people get.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think, speaking of James, talking about James taking the high road, it's worth pointing out also that James is the most divorced from all this. I mean, it's been 10 years, so it's probably a little bit easier for James to kind of give a no comment, just because it's not really as fresh in his mind as it is in Jimmy's mind.
I mean, James actually takes the high road. I'm not saying anything negative about Jimmy when I say that he does not take the high road in this article, but he really doesn't take the high road, Jill. If you read what he says, he's like, Billy did all this! And, he hits back. So, and that's not the definition of taking the high road.
I think Jimmy definitely comes across
he defends
in
himself
a more positive light than Billy.
Yeah, but that's not taking the high road.
Exactly.
I'm just talking about plain language. That's not what it means to take the high road. To take the high road is exactly what James did, and James was like, we had 4 divergent perspectives, and I choose to look at the positive. That's what James said. That's taking the high road. Jimmy was like, Billy blamed everybody. He blamed the fans. He blamed the manager. He blamed the band. That's not, that might all be valid and it's perfectly understandable to defend yourself and to hit back. But that's not what taking the high road means.
Jimmy also fucking hates the 90s.
It's out of context, and it's out of, the ability to hear the intonation in which he says something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one thing we can't...
Goes 2 ways.
Yeah, we can't overlook that. I think that all of this that we're reading it's culled down from actual conversations where there's joking going on or anger going on that may not come across in this article. I don't necessarily think there was a lot of joking going on in this section, but I think when we start talking about some of the other stuff, that there may have been some joking that was left or that didn't come across very well in the magazine. But yeah, I mean, I like you, Jill, I was just really, disappointed. I think at this point, when Billy, he keeps bringing up James, and at this point it just looks petty and annoying. Yeah. I mean, it's 10 years later. He's still trying to pin the breakup of the original Smashing Pumpkins on James, and I don't know. I don't necessarily disagree with Billy or anything like that. I'm not disputing the facts that James wasn't working very hard. I definitely don't know whether he was or not, but at this point, I mean, it's been 10 years, and it just makes him look bad when he keeps saying this stuff, especially when James, who is kind of divorced of the situation, says, I choose to remember the good times, and leaves it at that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very disappointing with Jimmy because, I mean, like you said, Jill, this is someone who Billy kind of purposely kept in the front or the limelight, so to speak, when he reformed the band and was supposed to be his partner and his musical soulmate, like he said. And now it's just kind of the same sniping that he was doing with James Iha. So, I mean, we're never going to know what really happened and who was really wrong and who was really right. But, I don't know, Billy just doesn't come across as in a very good light whenever he talks about things like this.
Chris, you said something really interesting to me. When we were talking about this, we'd gotten the hint from Twitter that Billy said in the article that he fired Jimmy, but we hadn't actually read the article. And, you had a really great observation about how Billy deals with, these sorts of these fights, these splits, these, painful divorces, kind of. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So what I was saying was that most people, so if you break up with your significant other, whether it's you that does the breaking up or they that does the breaking up, usually it's like immediately there is this initial anger or this initial denial or this initial I'm going to go and find somebody new, I'm all angry, I'm going to badmouth them to my friends, that sort of thing goes on. But then, some time passes, a month or two passes or however long it takes, and you just kind of mellow out and you realize, it's for the best, and bygones are bygones, and most people don't really hold grudges for all that long. I mean, unless the person did something truly horrible. But Billy kind of reacts the opposite. So the Smashing Pumpkins break up, and Billy just blames it on some arbitrary, I don't like the Britneys of the world dominating music, and just kind of makes up some excuses. And then a few years later comes out and says, it was really James Iha, and starts saying all these nasty things about James. And kind of the same thing happens with Zwan after the fact. He starts saying all these things about how the members are immoral and did all these things that weren't right. And now it's kind of the same thing that's happening with Jimmy. And I don't know if he thinks he's protecting these people at first because he's they're such good friends. I mean, he's talked a lot about how he did all this to protect James because James was someone who he thought was his friend. And then as the years go by, he just he can't protect him anymore because, I don't know, I guess he feels that he's being blamed for the Pumpkins having broken up, and he wants to make sure that people don't think that's what really happened. But it just strikes me as strange that, this immediately happens and that Billy outlines this, they had this screaming match where Jimmy is screaming all these horrible things about Billy. He called it 20 years of pent-up insults. And they make this public statement that, Jimmy's leaving, but, we're still cool, everything's fine. And now a year later, it's Billy is angry about it. It just
Put on
seems
his angry hat again.
Yeah, it's the opposite of how most people deal with things like that.
Yeah, I mean, in all this, I can't, I don't know. I'm happy to criticize things Billy does, say I wouldn't do that and that sort of thing, but to me it never adds up into a sort of overall negative judgment of him because I see all these positive things about him too, right? But this I can't help but think of because a lot of people who read our blog and read this article or whatever are that Billy Corgan is totally despicable, blah blah blah, and I just think, some of this comes from I don't know what, but I wonder how, someone, just an average person would come off if and they do. Someone goes on Jerry Springer or something and they're in the middle of a divorce and they yell a lot or something. And people are wow, that person was out of control, asshole, blah, 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 and it's well, they were mad and also they went on TV and saw publicity and that's a little sketchy. So those are obviously negative stuff. But, I don't know if that makes that person... I would be very hesitant to throw in this sort of, overall judgment about people. But, this is not... This stuff Billy says in this article is not really very cool. It's just... Chris, you and I have speculated in the past about why Jimmy and Billy split up. And I think, feel free to tell me you disagree with how I'm going to characterize what we tend to agree on, but I think we tend to think it has something to do with some things that are more practical like Billy wanting to be in the studio more, or wanting, not wanting to go off and do a solo project. Wanting to continue go on full blast with the Smashing Pumpkins, and maybe Jimmy wants to go off and do the Complex for a year or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Or I've even heard, occasionally I'll hear rumors from people saying things like they disagreed about the way the band was presenting itself during the last tour. Because, everyone who knows about the last tour knows that Billy sort of put on this, he incorporated into the set list an opportunity to sort of drum up anger from the crowd. It was like this kind of repeatedly semi-staged angry time. And I hear some rumors from some people, and I'm just saying that there's maybe there was some disagreement with them about how good an idea that was. But I'm not saying I know what the quote-unquote functional disagreement is between them. But I kind of believe that there's some sort of real difference, and then there's this sort of post hoc Billy Corgan emotional anger. I mean, this stuff about Jimmy being fundamentally unhealthy, the only way I can view that in a positive light is to imagine that Jimmy really is having some health or addiction concerns, or Billy thinks he is. It doesn't even have to be really having them. Billy thinks he is having those things, and Billy thinks he's doing the right thing by dishing out sort of tough fatherly discipline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some stuff in this article where Billy is clearly, and we know that he's done this in the past. Where he, with people who are struggling with drugs, and Billy takes a really hard public line, and cuts off that person because he thinks that's what's going to bring him back. You know what I mean? So maybe there's some of that, but I just feel like there's this sort of this, like the stuff with James, there's nothing going on there, right? And it just seems like there's some sort of emotionally driven, piling on of a rationalization or some sort of emotional reason that piles on top of the whatever, functional reasons. James just didn't want to do the band anymore, Darcy didn't want to do the band anymore, And instead of just kind of accepting that, it seems like it has to build up to some sort of he's always angry at me, which I don't know. Whatever. Sorry, that added up to nothing. It's just, what Billy says about Jimmy is just kind of...
Yeah, I think the part that bothered me the most was his statement about, Jimmy's a destructive person. Unless there really is something there with addiction where Jimmy is having problems, in that case, I think that, I guess Billy's justified in saying something like that. But otherwise, that kind of thing it's like you said, emotional rationalization. This awful split happened, we aren't really speaking to each other anymore, but it's not because of, both sides had a disagreement, it's, he's a destructive person, I don't want him around me. Yeah. I don't want to be around destructive people. That kind of thing is just, that's very insulting to someone.
Yeah. Cool. That was great.
Everyone is all cheerful by now. I bet everyone's listening to the podcast at the gym. They're all working out hard. They're really pumped up now.
Need to put a disco beat under the podcast. It's gonna get better.
I guess one of the other things that Billy's taken a lot of flack for from this article are his non-traditional and in some cases pseudoscientific beliefs, including the idea that he has some sort of psychic powers, that he consults psychics and shamans and has been taken in by what seems like basic cold reading to me, and that he has avoided Western medicine for 10 years but claims to have a variety of exotic diseases such as heavy metal poisoning and chronic dehydration, as well as his thoughts on the significance of the year 2012. You guys can probably guess my thoughts on all this. We've actually talked about this in the podcast before, and that's something I was saying before we started to Jason, that this, it's the kind of unfortunate thing in my mind about all this isn't hearing it, because it's all stuff we've heard before. I guess we haven't specifically heard that Billy thinks he has some sort of psychic powers before, but it's not all that shocking. I didn't hear it. It's like, oh my god, Billy Corgan thinks he's psychic.
It doesn't say he has psychic powers. It says he has some sort
the ability to psychically read people by staring at them.
It doesn't say psychic.
But
anyway.
Yeah,
I think it kind of does.
Let me look. Let me double check. I got it right here. Go on.
If you hear pages flipping, that's...
The first sign of what he believes to be his spiritual abilities. I was psychically reading them, I just didn't know what that was, he says. I was gathering information whether I was watching their body language or reading through them. I thought everybody was like that.
Billy Corgan is the mentalist.
Yes. He needs a CBS show.
But, I mean, like I was saying, none of that's really all that surprising to us, I don't think. I mean, we've all read everything from here to there, or at least pieces of it. We've all heard these kind of things from Billy before. The kind of thing that's unfortunate to me is that this is a pretty mainstream story. People who may not have been keeping track of Billy Corgan at all for the past X number of years, this may be the first thing they've read about him any time in the recent future, and this is the picture they get all at once, is all of this pseudoscientific nonsense all at once. I don't know, is this just part of being a big rock star, that you have to act all crazy? Am I wrong for thinking this is pretty embarrassing to fans and the band? I don't know, what do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, well, it's definitely... It piles onto that thing we've talked about before about, sometimes it's real hard to be a Smashing Pumpkins fan because Billy has this image in the media. And, he has this image in the media because of a lot of things, but then there's these, every few years he does a really bizarre interview and says bizarre things. And just like this, it's, there's, Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, and some people don't go to Tom Cruise movies because they believe that Scientology is a dangerous, pseudo-religion. And there's people who probably like Tom Cruise because he's a Scientologist, even if they're not Scientologists. And then there's people who say, I like to go watch Tom Cruise's movies. I don't really care what is, if he believes that, there's something about a volcano and aliens and starships that look like airplanes from World War II. But, there's people who are able to go to a Tom Cruise movie and not enjoy the art that he does and not make a big deal about how weird he is it might be in his own private life. And then, Billy Corgan has got his own set of foibles that some occasionally can go in the background like they were for a little while. But then one thing you can't say is that, he really and truly believes this, and right or wrong, if that's a deal breaker for you, if you can't be a fan of a guy who believes that a shaman, can see a
knows
dog.
What Billy's dog looked like.
Looks like when he was a kid by touching him. If that is so ridiculous to you that you can't take him seriously, anything he does, because this happened. He admits this happened to him, and he's proud to admit that it happened. Well, then there's plenty of other alternative rock people you can go out and listen to. You can.
I bet Eddie Vedder wasn't a monk in a past life.
But,
maybe he should have been.
This goes along, this is another one of those things that goes along the pile of the being a Smashing Pumpkins fan. Billy makes it really hard sometimes.
Some days he releases a song and it's easy, and some days he
gives a wild interview.
Yeah, it's a lot harder.
Exactly.
I think the Tom Cruise point is a good point, though, because his movies may not have been the greatest quality recently. I don't know what he's been in recently. War of the Worlds, Mission Impossible 3. But I don't really hear anyone saying, like you said, I'm not going to go see a Tom Cruise movie because Tom Cruise is crazy. It's people don't go see a Tom Cruise movie because the movie may not be very good. But
right.
His craziness doesn't really seem to have affected people's thoughts of him when he is working. And I wonder if that's really true with Billy. He's...
I'm not expert enough to say whether that's really true with Tom Cruise. But, I don't know. You don't think You don't think people start to say, oh, his movies suck now, he's no good as an actor now?
I know there are people who are, for whatever reason, very, very, very anti-Scientology, who will refuse to, if Tom Cruise was in the greatest movie ever, what call it, the movie everyone's, if Tom Cruise is an Avatar, and everyone in the world except for me has seen Avatar, and there'd be people who wouldn't go see Avatar because Tom Cruise is in it.
I think there are people who think less about it. I mean, I just don't believe that people are really that great at fully separating those. I just don't think those things are fully separable. You know, I mean, my view of Billy and the Pumpkins vis-a-vis the sort of music criticism world is that a lot of the critics are just they can't listen to the music because of all this stuff, which whatever, it's fine. But then a lot of them will turn around and say, no, I can't listen to music because the music is just horrible now. And right. I personally don't buy that. But
yeah, for me, I think it's not. I can definitely separate his craziness from his music, and I probably think that he's a lot crazier even maybe than you guys do, just because I also listen to podcasts about skepticism and science and things like that. It's another thing that I'm really interested in. And I mean, some of the stuff he's saying is just ludicrous. I was talking about cold reading before, for anybody who's not familiar with that. What that is specifically, with the shaman that claimed Billy claimed that he could see his dog as a child. Cold reading is basically you ask someone a series of leading questions in order to kind of gauge their answers from their body language and things like that, and then it comes across like the person who's asking the questions actually knows things about the person that they couldn't otherwise know, just because of the way that you're reacting to what they're asking you. It's pretty common. I mean, I joked about the mentalist, but there really are people that do mentalist acts, like kind of like magicians that kind of do this for a living. But yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's not like when I listen to A Stitch in Time, it's like, oh no, I can't listen to this. That guy that's singing is the crazy guy. It's more that, it's pretty well known amongst my friends that I am a fan of this band, and when things like this come out, it's like, I know I'm going to hear about it from everyone, or at least everyone who's heard about the news. Just like when the Jessica Simpson news came out, I mean, it didn't bother me at all, but I got to hear all sorts of joking about, hey, it's your favorite band, it's that guy from your favorite band, he's dating Jessica Simpson, she's so dumb.
The stigma of a Smashing Pumpkins fan.
Yeah.
We're so oppressed.
But what else about this interview do you think we should talk about? I mean, there's still a lot of things we haven't covered. Those were the two things I thought were the most noteworthy, but is there anything else you guys think of that that we really should be talking about? I know something that a lot of the commenters, not necessarily on Hipsters United, but in some other places have talked about or have latched onto, was the frequent Billy's insistence that he's a great musician who deserves to be mentioned with the greats. I mean, I don't think any of us disagree with that. Is that really all that bad that he's saying that? Is it really all that shocking?
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where the way that musicians are supposed to act nowadays is you're not supposed to ask for to call yourself great. You're not supposed to do that. To say that, to do what Billy did in this article a couple of times, to say that Pete doesn't get the respect and he deserves the respect. That's sort of goes against sort of the general rock star thing where in the modern, the current rock star where the payment-y sort of thing where you're supposed to, oh yeah, I made these things and oh yeah, and it was all right, but who cares? Just music, whatever. And Billy put all this psychic effort into this, into his life's work, and he feels that, and he rightfully says that his influence is pretty strong, and he feels that he should be, as respected as some of the people he was looking up to when he was a kid. I guess the Black Sabbath was one of the bands he mentioned in the article, and I guess that would be, he probably would say he's made it. He's now a peer with Black Sabbath in terms of his influence, and I think he's got a point. But It's one of those things
you don't
you're
induct yourself into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
There you go. You're not supposed to do that, yeah. But that's one of those things that Billy does that's one of the things about Billy that, once every few years when he does a big interview like this, he's going to bring up the no respect angle. He's been using the no respect angle since they were coming up in Chicago, so it's a whole different no respect angle nowadays, but it's still the no respect angle.
I mean, I think he's right to an extent, but I think a lot of it is his own fault. Like he's saying that he's not being respected by, the music publications and the people who talk about who the great artists of our time are, and then he comes and he does these interviews where he doesn't portray himself in a very positive light, and that affects what people think of him. It's like self-defeating.
Self-defeating, exactly, yeah.
Well, he wants you to like him anyway.
And some of us do. I mean, clearly we're all on here talking about him.
Maybe it's all just a big test to see who will be left at the end.
Yes. Who's the last fan standing?
That totally fits with so many things he's said over the years.
And it's a theme that comes out, whenever something like this happens and he makes some inflammatory statements like this, you always get those handful of fans that say, "That's it, I can't do it anymore, I'm out."
Yeah, but the thing that kills me about those sorts of, it's not, that happens every time he gets in the news, even for things that are fairly innocuous or things that are just nothing new. Like we said about this interview, 90% of this is not new to fans, So I'm really.
It doesn't make it any more palatable, though. I mean, just because it's not new, it's still a gross representation of what he could potentially be doing, which is talking about his music.
Yeah, he does talk about his music all the time. It just doesn't get that widely reblogged. But on our blog, Hipsters United, hipstersunited.com, you can find Billy talking about his music all day long. But I think it matters in terms of the motivations of people bailing or staying, quote unquote, in our little group, our little fun Smashing Pumpkins cult, whether it's new or not, because I think that speaks to motivation. Because I just think, if you already understand that Billy's kind of a jerk, but he's really talented and makes good music, right? You already understand all that. And then something comes out that informs you that he's a jerk. And then suddenly you're like, that's it, I'm selling all my CDs. And this happens every single time. You always see a group of these people. And it doesn't even have to be that he's being that much of a jerk. Like I said, it just be that he's being a little weird or demanding respect or whatever, But there's these constant exoduses. It's been going on forever. And I think it's mostly about embarrassment, Like people, the social temperature gets too hot. Chris doesn't want... Chris could be a future exiter. Chris could leave in the future. And it would just be because Chris knows everything about this band. And not that Chris would do this, and it's fine if he... Well, I don't know if it's fine. But
if there's no episode 58, then...
Yeah. When Chris leaves, it could be that Billy has done something that genuinely is, totally offensive to Chris. But most of the things that Billy does, and then people are like, that's it, I'm out. I just can't really believe that people are so deeply offended by it. Now, this thing with Jimmy, maybe, because Jimmy has so many fans, right? This one is a little different. But a lot of them have been like he makes that silly Bullet with Butterfly Wings rap video, which was whatever. I have my own views of the motivations for that, but, a lot of people are like, that's it, I'm out. Really? Over that? And it's just, frankly, it's just people have been getting teased and they're embarrassed, and the next news story that comes up they latch onto as their excuse, because you can't say I'm abandoning this band because you all are making fun of me. You cannot say that. So your subconscious finds a way to latch onto some excuse, right? It's like you see something like, oh, that's the last straw, I was just waiting, and this is too much, right? But really it's just really why you're leaving is being made fun of or whatever. Or maybe there's a lot of people who just don't know what Billy's really like, and they really are learning. But it's to me, when did Billy write Jesus is the Son or whatever? I mean, I guarantee he had goofy spiritual beliefs in 1988. I guarantee it. You know? So, like, that's the sort of stuff about the shaman or whatever. I mean, it's just like, did you listen to Gish? It was all sorts of like, weird stuff he's talking about. Watch the videos, you know? Like, disappearing into a bathtub and all these flowers and shit. I mean, like, I don't know. I think
that was the LSD talking.
LSD, man.
Artists are not scientists. They're not people who go to grad school and, like, I mean, they're artists. They like, embrace this sort of stuff, you know? I just think so many artists are like, they have these weird beliefs and this sort of stuff, and people just, they expect it, and they expect it, they almost want it. You know, they want their artists to be weird and spiritual and in touch with energies and that sort of stuff. That's totally normal in our artists. So, I don't know.
I think a lot of it, too, is we don't hear about it. So, one thing Billy has never been is shy about expressing himself and being what he thinks is honest about how he's currently feeling and what he's currently doing.
Yeah.
I think that's probably too much for some people.
I mean, I bet James is mad at Billy, but James is smart enough not to say so.
Yeah.
I mean, give Billy this. If he's an asshole, he's open about it. And he lets you...
Not afraid to
hit back
show
at him,
who he really is, yeah.
I mean, everybody's having a good time beating up on him. Like, he enabled us to do that, you know? I'm not saying this is something that's like a great virtue, but, you know, I mean, there are how many assholes are there in the world that go around acting like nice people every time they're in public, you know? Lots. Especially in Hollywood, so I hear.
So, Jill, you've probably read the article more recently than any of us, or read it for the first time more recently than any of us. I mean, you mentioned earlier how you didn't want to go off on a rant, but now may be the time to rant, I guess, if you're still in the mood to do so. I mean, what upset you the most?
I think, you know, I actually didn't want to read the article. I found myself constantly putting it off this week, partially because I had a really busy week, but also because of all of the negative comments I'd started hearing from people on the blog and sort of this strange alternate reality that I was living in was kind of funny, not knowing exactly what he said and trying to intuit his meaning from all of the random commenters on Hipsters United. It was kind of a fun game for a while. But, you know, I think several people resonated with me, you know, their comments that I'd read earlier in the week resonated with me after I read the article today, in that, you know, I feel like we're reading sort of the same article over and over, in maybe not so much the details of, you know, Jimmy being fired or this, that, or the other, but it's this, woe is me, I've had so many struggles in life, everybody's screwed with me, and still there are these really, truly sort of asshole moments that he's conveying to the audience in general. And, you know, I always try to put myself in the shoes of a totally new fan, or someone being introduced to the Smashing Pumpkins or Billy Corgan's body of work for the very first time, based on, you know, something like this. Rolling Stone is a general interest magazine for music, and it is possible, albeit very confusing, that someone may have never heard of Billy Corgan before reading this article. You know, America's youth, perhaps. And for me to continue reading these types of articles that do project a general negativity, in my opinion, about the sort of worldviews of Billy Corgan, which are at odds with what he talks about on Twitter and on Everything From Here to There and some of these other venues where he's trying to be almost a spiritual advisor or share his personal ability to overcome the obstacles in his life. You know, I think it can be a real turnoff to people. And from my perspective, I get upset thinking that this sort of self-defeatist behavior turns people, or could potentially turn people off from enjoying his body of work like I have in the past. So that's kind of a selfish reaction, I think. It's like, everybody should have this experience just like I did, and people should align their interests to mine or something. I mean, I don't even really know what my motivations are with that, besides truly trying to spread something to people that might enjoy it. So it's that sort of intrinsic struggle I deal with, to stay positive about the band, to really truly stay positive about what they stand for and what they're trying to do. And I feel like so much of what we've seen from Billy Corgan in the last 3 to 4 years has been a story of personal and spiritual growth. And instances like this just seem very regressive to me. They seem, we all know that Billy Corgan is terrible at being tactful. He just is. He recognizes this. He berates people in the audience at his shows. I mean, that's not a lot of tact. So I guess it's not really a surprise. It's just a disappointment. And I really can't even talk too much about how concerning it is that there are these sort of cultish tendencies, or these dalliances and strange, admittedly strange practices. Like, oh, well, we were like christened with the cool name and everything else, but the sex with no orgasm, no thank you. Like, it's just like
that's hardcore. Yeah,
it's like this picking and choosing of spiritual principles that
Catholics do.
Well, it's a lot of religious purists believe that is the sign of a weak spirit. Whether or not you're Baptist or Catholic or, Presbyterian or Muslim, I mean, there are a lot of hard lines in spiritual disciplines. And what Billy Corgan is doing is assembling this strange set of beliefs, very personalized, as they said in the article, and then trying to make sense of it in a public, open forum. And that's okay to a certain extent. But I think it does, like Chris was saying earlier, start to negatively reflect on his actual work, and can be a turnoff for a lot of people. I mean, I know, what Andrew was saying earlier about Tom Cruise and some of the stunts that he pulled really did turn people off from his work. And it's, both to their credit and at their expense. So I don't know if that's ranty enough for you, Chris. I could probably continue. I don't know. It's like, on one hand, Billy Corgan is portrayed as this really giving, wonderful person, taking care of his father as he deals with addiction, befriending Jessica Simpson, and this sort of simple love that he talks about. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, you might talk about these new friends that he has, but then he's just totally lambasting the old musical soulmate that he's always told us resided in Jimmy Chamberlin. And furthermore, it's like we've seen Billy be wary of the tabloid-fueled infotainment in the past, but he's basically coming out to do infotainment on his own terms with a giant music magazine, which he knows will have wide publicity and widespread readership. So there's a strange sense of control. I think someone on the blog, it might have been Flappy, said that there was a blurb in Rolling Stone that Corgan had approached them for the interview. To me, it just seems like he's wanting to tell this very complicated, very negative story, and I don't know what the ulterior motive is. I can guess about it, but it seems at odds internally with the belief systems he's been trying to espouse in the last couple of years, and it seems at odds with trying to associate his new projects that are meant for positive energy, that are meant for, mind, body, soul integration. He's refusing to ensconce them in a positive aura to get as sort of esoteric and spiritually gray as I can possibly term that. So,
I've been thinking a lot about that this week, like why he would, he has this song coming out. Why would he go and approach them about doing an interview? He had to know when he released this song on Tuesday that this article was going to be coming out the following day. Why would he do something like that? From our perspective, we are hardcore fans, and it seems to us like, oh, he's overshadowed the release of this great song with, tabloid gossip and negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe he was thinking that from the perspective of someone who didn't know about Tiergarten or that it was even happening, this article may have clued them in on it. And so he says these inflammatory things, and it gets widely read and widely commented on. And maybe there are some people out there that read it and like, oh, Billy Corgan's writing a new album and releasing it for free. I should go check that out. I don't know. I just think if that really is the reason, it's really disingenuous because he's thrown other people under the bus.
It seems gimmicky, too.
And it does seem gimmicky.
I think at one point we had joked, or Jason and I had joked, about, like, Billy Corgan's burgeoning relationship with Jessica Simpson being, like, the gimmick for the second song coming out. I keep wondering what's going to keep him in the news. Like, what are the planned events that he's going to keep pushing to be in the news every time he coincidentally happens to be releasing a new song? Like, this could get really crazy and interesting, I suppose.
I think there's a lot to what you guys are saying. Billy, the top takeaway I have from the article is his desire to have his work placed highly in the rock pantheon and treated with proper respect. That to me is like, that's what drives him, And, personal relationships and his own sanity and what people think of him as a person, actually he's willing to sacrifice at least some of all those things to that goal, And I think, this sort of publicity-seeking thing, he's said openly that he thinks the current cultural / commercial milieu for music requires that you have this sort of story to get your music heard, that Radiohead can't even get heard unless they put out a free album, or that Britney Spears can't get heard unless she has a meltdown, Mm-hmm. He said that openly, and that was actually, ironically, the last time he did an interview with Rolling Stone. So this time, maybe he's like, yeah, well, here's my all the crazy things I've been thinking, times 10. I think he plays up some of this stuff, he exaggerates it. He does tons of stuff that is normal, but he's willing to be like, he's willing not only to go to the shaman. I hope you guys are pronouncing that word correctly because I do not know. Not only will he go to it, but then he'll go start telling everyone about it. It's like a publicity stunt. Or in some sense, it almost has to be partially a publicity stunt. I'm not saying he doesn't also believe it, but it's one thing to believe something. It's another thing to just go start talking about it.
Yeah. It's kind of airing or setting your personal spiritual beliefs on display. And that doesn't go over very well sometimes. That's why we had some wee skirmishes in the Middle Ages.
To go along with what you said, Jason, I totally agree. Kind of like the thesis of the article seems to be Billy thinks he deserves this place in the Pantheon, and he's not getting it. And then he goes and talks about when they were releasing Zeitgeist, about all these songs that were, these great songs, like power rock ballads, I think he calls them, that he left off the album on purpose. Which seems kind of incongruous. Like he wants to be known as this, like, as one of the great musicians. He writes what he believes is a great song and then doesn't release it.
That's right. He wants you to love him anyway.
There was a lot. It was an interesting bit of self-defeatism that was sort of brought up in that. That was very strange. I mean, obviously we knew that Zeitgeist had a theme, and Billy had a point for making it the way it was, but to admit that, there were songs that probably could have been more well received had he put it on the album. I think it's very telling as to, once he sits down and commits himself to a project, he's damn well gonna finish it, at least most of the time. Sometimes there are projects he lets fall by the wayside. But that was interesting. And that's not surprising at all. I mean,
we've talked about "Let Me Give the World to You" before.
It's
kind of the same idea.
Yeah, and then there was the whole bringing up the rants that he did at the 25th anniversary shows, where he knew he was pissing people off, and he wanted to piss people off, and damn if that meant that people were going to go away and not buy his records anymore. He wanted to piss them off. It's a very, very strange, to say the least. Not to say Billy's a guy who's always in it for the buck. Always looking to. you can't. He's not in it to make friends.
No way. Yeah. That's absolutely right. And he wants it all, and he wants it on his terms.
He wants it on his terms, exactly.
If I may make a loopy analogy, just because I think this is funny. Anyone who watched the men's figure skating competition at the recent Olympics, especially those of you from the United States, might be familiar with the long-term rivalry. I'm not that familiar with it, but I gather some about it, between this guy, Evan Lysacek, and then this other guy, Johnny Weir, right? And apparently there were these rule changes in how skating was going to be judged, and now the judging is all very technical. And Evan Lysacek, did his routine completely catering to the judges, right? Did all this technical stuff, right? Fuck the artistry. I'm trying to win the gold medal, right? And he won the gold medal. And then Johnny Weir is like, I don't like the rule changes. I will skate my skate. And he does it his way, but he's also totally calm about it. He's like, I skated a great program, and if they don't see it that way, that's fine. I'm fine finishing sixth. That's okay. Billy wants to win the gold medal and skate the program he wants to skate. So he's like, fuck the judges, basically, which is exactly what he said. He's like, screw the critics, screw the audience. You're wrong. I just skated the great program, and I didn't win the gold medal because you people changed the rules, right? I mean, that's basically what he's doing. So,
see, I told you that article was interesting.
Which article?
The one about the figure skating.
Figure skating?
Yeah, the one in the New York Magazine about Lysacek and Weir.
Oh, do you give me that?
Yeah.
There you go.
Sometimes subscribing to the New York Magazine, I get loads of.
It all came back. Jill, it went. See, now you know I read it. I did.
Well, then the guy who won the silver medal in the Olympics decided that he wasn't happy either, and he awarded himself the platinum medal on his own website. He called his silver medal a platinum medal because he thought he deserved a better one. So maybe Billy will do that someday if he is not nominated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
He will have his own Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where he is the charter member.
Billy will develop a quint. It's even better than a quad. I can do a quint. It's an 1800.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. Our closing song of the week is A Stitch in Time from Visalia, California on August 26, 2009, so that you can compare the early live version with the one that just got released last week. Good night, everybody.
It's just a stitch in time. It's perfect out of mind. Sailing on an empty sea. We're perfect out of mind. I got your stitch in mind. And we're not far away. Don't say you want to rush. Or say you had enough. Don't let them make our tricks on you. The summer of this guy. You're everywhere at once and you can't break free. You're everywhere at once and you can't catch me. Watch out. The summer has got me. It's just a stitch in time. We fit together fine. A puzzle looking for its piece. You're perfect out of mind. You travel nation mind. Everywhere I look, I see. Don't say you want too much. They'll say you had enough. Darling, that tricks on you. The summer has got me. The summer has got me. You're everywhere at once and you can't break free. You're everywhere at once and you can't break free. You're everywhere at once and you can't catch me. Watch out. The summer has got me. Yeah. The summer has got me. The summer has got me. The summer has got me.
The Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins, Virgin Records, or Warner Brothers Reprise Records. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina 2 album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in September of 2000.